Article 3, Section 5, the so-called rights to freedom of religion o ang karapatan sa malayang relihiyon. Tara, pag-usapan natin. Welcome to Allan's Out of the Box! Sa ating Philippine Constitution of 1987, Article 3 ng Bill of Rights, Section 5, sinasabi na no law shall be made respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The free exercise and enjoyment of religious profession and worship without discrimination or preference shall forever be allowed. No religious test shall be required for the exercise of civil and political rights.
Ibig sabihin, hindi dapat magbalangkas ng batas para sa pagtatatag ng relihiyon o nagbabawal sa malayang pagsasagamit nito. Dapat ipahintulot magpakailanman ang malayang pagsasagamit at pagtatamasa ng pagpapahayag ng relihiyon at pagsamba ng walang pagtatangi o pamimili. Hindi dapat kailanganin ng pagsusulit panrelihiyon sa pagsasagamit ng mga karapatang sibil o pampolitika. Sa makatuwid, hindi tayo pinipilit ng Estado na kung saan tayo makikianib o kung sinong Diyos ang ating sasambahin at kung paano tayo magsasamba. Tayo ay may kalayaan na makapamili ng ating relihiyon o minsan ang iba nga ay walang masasabing relihiyong kinaaaniban. This clause embodies the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause, kung saan ang dalawang ito ay poprotekta at magkakaroon ng malayang relihiyon sa Pilipinas. At para lubos pa natin maunawaan ang karapatang ito, usasain natin ang principles at jurisprudence. Number 1. Establishment Clause. The Establishment Clause prohibits the state from passing any law that establishes, sponsors, or favors a particular religion. This ensures that the government remains neutral concerning religion and does not promote or fund any religious activities or organizations. Key principle: government neutrality. The state must neither endorse nor oppose any religion. This means that the government should not provide special privileges or impose disadvantages on any religious group. Second is the separation of church and state. Although not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution, the principle of separation of church and state is derived from the Establishment Clause. The state cannot use public resources to support religious institutions or integrate religious doctrines and governmental function. In a case of Estrada versus Escritor in 2003, in this case, the Supreme Court upheld the practice of religious accommodation and interpreted that the freedom of religion includes the right to profess one's beliefs without interference from the government. The court ruled that an employee's relationship outside marriage allowed by her religion cannot be the basis for administrative punishment because of the freedom of religious exercises. Free Exercise Clause. The Free Exercise Clause guarantees the right of every person to freely profess, practice, and exercise the religion. This includes not only the internal belief system or freedom to believe, but also the outward expression of religious conduct or the freedom to act. The key principle: beliefs versus conduct. While the freedom to believe is absolute, the freedom to act on those beliefs may be subject to regulation, especially if it is conflicts with the compelling state interests such as public safety, order, or health. However, any limitation on religious conduct must be narrowly tailored and least restrictive. Secondly, religious accommodation. The state is required to make reasonable accommodation for religious practices, especially when applying general law to specific religious act. This ensures that individuals are not forced to violate their religious belief unless a compelling government interest exists, and even then, the interference must be minimal. In accordance to Reyes versus Bagatsing in 1983, the Supreme Court ruled that the government must allow public religious assemblies as long as they do not pose a clear and present danger to public safety, peace, and order. The right to peaceful assembly, even for religious purposes, must be protected. Once more, according to Ebralinag versus Division Superintendent of Schools of Cebu in 1993, the court upheld the right of Jehovah's Witnesses to refuse to salute the flag and recite the Panatang Makabayan or the Patriotic Oath of the Philippines in public schools, affirming that the Free Exercise Clause allows exemption for sincerely held religious beliefs. But there's a limit to the free exercise of religion. While the Free Exercise Clause provides broad protections, the government may impose restriction on religious practices under certain conditions, particularly when there is a compelling state interest and the regulation is at least restrictive means available. Example of the limitations are the public order and safety, religious practices that directly threaten public health, safety, or order can be regulated. For instance, religious rituals involving the use of illegal substances or practices that endanger others such as human sacrifice or polygamy are not protected. Secondly, public morals. The state can regulate practices that violate public morals, provided that such regulation does not unnecessarily infringe on the core tenets of religious beliefs. And there's more. No religious test for civil or political rights. What is this all about? The last clause of Section 5, Article 3 prohibits the imposition of any religious test as a condition for the exercise of civil or political rights. This ensures that individuals are not discriminated against in public office, education, or other civic duties based on their religious beliefs or affiliation. The key principle, the equal protection. All individuals, regardless of their religious beliefs, must have equal access to civil and political rights. Second, non-discrimination. Any law or regulation that effectively bars individuals from participating in public life because of their religion is unconstitutional. Balancing religious freedom and other rights. The Supreme Court has emphasized that the freedom of religion is not an absolute right and must be balanced with other constitutional rights, such as the right to life, liberty, and equal protection under the law. What's the framework for balancing? 1. Compelling state interest test. This test is used to evaluate whether the government's interference with religious practices is justified. The government must demonstrate that has a compelling interest such as protecting public health or national security, and that the means employed are the least restrictive necessarily to achieve that interest. And lastly, strict scrutiny. In cases where religious freedom is significantly curtailed, the courts apply strict scrutiny to ensure that the government's action is justified and no less restrictive alternative exists. And lastly, We have to consider the public international law consideration. The Philippines, as a member of the international community, also abides by international agreements and treaties that protect freedom of religion, such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, and the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, or ICCPR. These instruments provide that every person has the right to freedom of thoughts, conscience, and religion, including the freedom to change the religion or beliefs, and to manifest the religion in teaching, practice, worship, and observance.
At bilang konklusyon, ang kalayaan ng relihiyon sa Pilipinas ay isang matatag at malalim na proteksyon na karapatan sa konstitusyon na nag-uugat sa kaparehas na Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. Habang ang gobyerno ay dapat naman manatiling neutral o pantay tungkol sa mga bagay na pangrelihiyon. It is also tasked with ensuring that religious practices do not infringe on other fundamental rights or ang interes ng Estado. Through a balancing test, Philippine courts have sought to harmonize religious liberty with the needs of public order and welfare, reflecting both constitutional and international human rights standards. Muli, ako po si Allan M. Castillo mula sa BPA OUS 1B. Hanggang sa susunod na episode ng Allan's Out of the Box!